Boom. All right, so we have a special meeting of finance committee. Town of Orono, got Leo, Sarah, myself, Jacob and Zach here. So with that, Zach, why don't you, kick us off?
Sure. So I took a look through both of these this morning. They seem to be very similar services and very similar pricing. And essentially it kind of boils down to, in my opinion, differences, or the primary differences are the size of each organization. Northeast Municipal is more of a one-man operation. Moores and Cabot is a larger operation. Joe Kutara through Moores and Cabot is the one that Cornell had come in and give a whole presentation on bond issuance. Richard Brannigan with Northeast Municipal was the one who handled our last bond issuance. I was fairly new to the organization at the time, but I did have some limited contact with him and he seemed very knowledgeable, very professional, responded to all my new guy questions. So I think both are good options. I spoke to Clint about it a little bit this morning and he said he doesn't have a distinct preference, but if you pushed him to make a decision, he would lean towards Joe Kutara. So I guess I'm here to say that we haven't really made a rock solid decision, but I think that falls a little more in your guys' court.
Joe's Northeast or Joe's the other?
Joe and Moores and Cabot.
So these would be in addition to doing it ourselves through the bond bank,
I think this would be an alternative.
or an alternative, I mean, so
Yep.
this would be an alternative.
I think I'm leaning a little bit for Joe Kutara also based on, he did the last bonding for the schools here in town, which was pretty complicated. They were like weaving the bond around other bonds that were leaving at certain years. And I went to a couple of those school board hearings and, anyway, I thought he was excellent and they had really good experience with him in a somewhat complicated situation, not a straightforward, like simpleness. So I'm leaning a little toward that based on that and the presentation he gave to council, which I also thought was quite well done. So I'm just gonna say that's my own, from what I've seen so far, that looks similar, but if there's other questions people wanna ask, go for it.
I don't, was that just in regards to the payback schedule that he did an alternate one or, cause I know we did that way back when we did the HVAC stuff, we had it. Like this step thing where stuff came off and we added more and all that stuff, so did they do something similar?
They did, yeah, and so that it kept things for the taxpayers really steady, which
Right,
I
to
like,
meet
not being
my
split.
hunches,
Yeah.
that's probably. I mean, that's just setting payback schedule, which is probably not complex for anyone that does that, would be my hunch.
I think it was more complicated than that. So I don't remember enough, Leo. I just remember sitting at the meeting and the school board going around and about and Joe having some very specific solutions every time they brought something up. Like, here's an option for how to handle that. Here's a different option for how to handle that. And I liked it, but
Okay, like I feel like when we did it for the previous bond for the HVAC systems, I think like. I get the impression that Honeywell laid out that for us and that's just what the bond people did,
Yeah.
so, but I
anyway,
I know
just had
nothing
good
about, you said versus doing it ourselves, I don't know that, I'm not aware of how. But do we have to engage with the bond council, does, we told
And that-
not to, or I don't know any of that.
I think the bond council will help us kind of decide, because I believe, if I remember right from Orno's previous issuance, that they kind of mapped it out both ways of doing it to the bond bank and what those fees and everything would look like
Yeah.
versus going out to the competitive offering process. So they kind of mapped it all out on it and everything, and while the bond bank initially kind of is a little cheaper, there are fees and everything that go along with that as well.
And that's, what I would prefer to do, is get comparison. A couple things related to that. Is I know that Clint had talked to us as part of the capital planning about doing a bond issuance, and I know we've got, library and other things, but this seems, I guess this is, now that we're talking about engaging in a bond advisor, it's getting real, so what, I don't have an understanding of why we're going at the bond, what we're bonding for, why now, and so I'd like to understand more of that as well.
I'm feeling the same way, and I know this is probably just, the frustration on staff at times for like, okay, we're talking about doing this, now we're doing it, but I feel like he mentioned about doing it, and now we're doing it, so I guess I wanna really understand when we start to pay for something. And because I don't feel like, we're certainly, I think we have to do more work to understand what we'll be going out for and, you know, kind of when and all of that stuff. So I'm not invested honestly in either of these. I'd like to understand the pricing, which I just looked at. It just,
Just like,
Yeah, there's a section of each one that has a fee schedule.
I wanna point me toward it, that's what I mean.
but yeah, so that's the main, so when we say we're engaging, what does that mean and when do we start paying?
Yeah.
Because we're not, you know, I think it's 13 million is sort of the grand total of what we're talking about roughly. And well, and again, you have to have discussions about whether
Yeah.
we're finding
Right, we may
that or
not be
what
there.
we're doing.
Yeah, I know there were some recommendations in the capital plan that Clint had kind of put like a mock-up.
Which has
My
not been
assumption
discussed.
was that the library was the first thing on there, correct?
To my knowledge, that's the only true and hard piece.
Right.
that-
Which.
Well, that's
Yeah.
not even,
Yeah.
that's not even, that's like,
Here, right?
we haven't thoroughly vetted that's covered and bonded, I don't. think
Okay.
Either, in my mind, we have to, because
Okay.
if that's in 2 years from now and it's 2.6, I mean, I don't think it's probably a foregone conclusion. But I don't know, I haven't heard when they need the money, when we have,
So-
any of that stuff that
Right.
is important.
I'm looking the bond recommendation on page 69 in the CIP. It's probably the most up-to-date thing we have. Sarah,
Yep,
is
I was
that correct?
looking at, I've got appendix C from that pulled up, and you were spot on, about 13 million was the bond goal. And it looked like the stuff that he was recommending be bonded was
Oh,
a lot of WPCF, so the sludge press at WPCF, Route 2, Hillside, Fennec. So here, the library funds. Still have public safety building on there, but I guess I don't know what that holds with the new building and all that change going on. I know we discussed the possibility of a ladder truck as well being on that list.
Yeah, and so that all is fine. To Leo's point though, as far as which advisor we go with, it sounds like they're both the same. I'll defer to staff on your all's recommendations. I would though like to one, you know, when we start paying and what we're paying for. Two, determine what exactly we are bonding for and why. And then three, once we get to that point, have a comparison. I'm assuming the bond council will be able to give us a comparison. This is what it looks like if you go to the bond bank. This is what it looks like if you go through an advisor, in which case we can make a decision at that point. So I'm seeing this as a multi-step process, which I can't believe that just came out of my mouth, but yeah.
Was there a reason, can you run me through that again, Jacob, in what order? I feel like Clint said something to us about the last couple times you had questions about the bond, that some of this was about hiring the bond advisor first to help answer some of those questions. I've had several questions, and what I think I've heard was first we hire the person and then we get advice on those questions. So can you just walk back through what you said for steps?
Yeah, and so if hiring the advisor is the first step, that's fine. I would like to know then what the advisor is providing us and what that's going to cost us before we even determine what we're issuing bonds for.
I mean, is there any chance that you guys can envision that something doesn't have to get bonded out from this list in the next couple of years? You see a world where none
Oh,
of
I
it has to
totally,
get.
I,
I mean,
no,
right, I mean,
something,
something
yeah.
is gonna happen.
I'm not advocating
Right,
against bonding.
Yeah.
I just,
Well, I mean, but so, yeah, something I think,
I mean, I don't see how something is gonna be bonded.
yeah,
I would think so. But timing wise, but there are lots of question marks around all of these, the public works group too, that has been, now it's saying we're using TIF funds on that. Oh, no, it's saying that you have TIF fund,
So
we've allocated funds from TIF, so that's not bonding.
I guess if those are questions that a bond advisor walks us through, then that's fine, I'm on board with them.
But I feel like they're not, I feel like these are more like, Hillside, Bennick, Route 2,
The first,
Sludge Press, those are all council decisions. Like yay or nay.
Well,
Absolutely.
And then like, what, yay or nay, are we, which part of these and when do we, do we
Yeah.
have to do the Hillside? No. Do we have to do Bennick? No. Do we, those are council decisions. And then once the council, which we have not discussed this this was
Yeah.
like in here, so I really am concerned that there's a lot in here and we were very clear, this is just, here it is, we're not really getting into details, so we've got to get into details about all of that stuff. And then, so I don't feel like a bond advisor is someone that's gonna advise with what we do and, are we doing this? That's.
Are we doing the projects is 100% council's decision.
Right.
But I do think the bond advisor could be useful in walking us through if you do it bonded versus if you pay some of this out of your reserves and your TIF and what those financial consequences look like for us as a town, right? That's what I understood, and you should speak, but the little conversation I had with Clint, it sounded like bringing a bond advisor on was important to do early from what I understood, so go ahead.
yep, that's my understanding as well. So my thoughts on it would kind of be that, we're looking at bonding up to 13 million. And then with the advisor on, they can kind of help us work through that process of, we're looking at up to 13 million. We decide to bond, 6 or 7, they can help us work out what the costs and what that process would look like. So kind of getting the advisor locked in is usually the first step, just so we can kind of have that path forward with the amount that we're gonna bond, because it sounds like we're gonna bond something regardless at
I
some
think that's
point.
fair.
Yeah. Is this the price on back page here? Where am I finding the prices on this first? This one, I found the fee and expense schedule. The pages weren't numbered, but it's right before the resume. Inside this packet, if you go just one page back from the resume, that looks like the fee and expense schedule. And I'm thinking it's this page 24 here, but I could be wrong. Jacob, does this look like what you would expect to see, the last page of this
That's, I'm
one?
trying,
Which one?
Not the one with the picture, or no, the other one. That.
Next to it.
yeah, not to exceed, yeah.
It's the very last page, I believe, of that booklet.
Yeah.
Am I correct, Jacob?
Yeah, that would be,
Or-
yes, exactly.
That's some of it, and then page 23 also has some of it as well.
Page 23.
Yep, and that's based on.
But these would be fees based on when we actually bond, not,
Well,
it looks
there's,
like it's fees per,
but also on the back page, it says something about fees per hour before the bonding.
yes, exactly,
So there is,
yes.
a fee, like here about advisory fee, not related to issuance of the debt. So if we're not yet bonding, I assume we have an advisory fee per hour. So it looks like there. Is that correct? Tom?
Yep, I think we're asking them on questions that aren't related to debt issuance or bonding.
Oh, so even the ones preliminary before we've bonded out would not be that fee, they would be part of the cost on the previous page?
I believe so.
Okay,
So, yeah, I mean,
And then on 22, there's a little summary on the bottom left for the issue size and cost points there, I believe.
so walk me through, I haven't done one of these, so it depends on the issue size of the bond, and then it's a charge per $1,000 bonded, or is that what I'm looking at on page 22?
I think so. I'm a little new to these as well, to be honest.
Okay,
So so, I mean, I am not at all an expert in this, but what I believe is that an advisor will charge us essentially consulting fees.
Mhm.
And then once we decide to move forward with what we decide to move forward, the fees in 22, essentially the origination fees, all of those, that's what we can compare with the bond bank. So, to issue $5 million bonds over 3 tranches or something to that extent, this is what you would be paying in fees. At the bond bank, this is what you would be paying, with an advisor through a private.
Yeah.
Through a private sale.
Agreed.
so, I mean, for me, I'm just looking at this for the first time. That would weigh on, I mean, if all things being somewhat equal, that would weigh on where my interest lied on me is to say, okay, if we borrowed 5 mil, if we borrowed. 13
Exactly,
mil,
yeah, this is what it's gonna cost us.
This, they're both $200 an hour, I think this guy,
Yeah.
this one says like 10 hours, man, so there'll be a good.
Where's that?
And typically, these fees would just be kind of rolled into the bond issuance. And that's what we did it last time, was the fees and the cost of it, or just kind
Yeah,
of rolled into it.
Closing costs, all that, I get it.
Yeah.
Feels better when we just roll it into this number.
That's right, that way we get to pay interest on it for free.
Yeah.
It's like no fee at all for the first 10 hours of consulting, right? If you get down to the fourth bullet, there'll be no fee charge for services requiring less than 10 hours per
Yeah.
engagement. So the first 10 hours of consult,
Which,
How do you read that from there? Should the engagement required?
there will be,
Oh, okay. Oh, that was down the other one. Okay.
sounds like no fee for the first 10 hours.
but we were going to exceed 10 hours.
I am sure. I was just pointing out that I think the 10 hour that Leo was reading is
Yeah.
saying what happens after the first 10 that were free.
So if you go over, then they are gonna charge it for those first thing. That's what that must mean.
Yep, should be.
Yep.
So it's free. unless-
So if we consult and we say after a little bit, Leo, we're not doing it, we're out, then if you haven't gone 10 hours, we don't pay a penny. I got you. As soon as we go over 10, we pay one, right?
Yeah.
Got it.
So $1.15 per, let's see, because it's a step thing, first thing.
Mhm,
Okay.
But
First thing was the same,
mhm.
10 to 20.
But again, they'll be or finish it off now.
Well, yeah, as I'm just looking at, they're slightly different pay scales that. $1.50 the next one, $1.50 up to 20. Dollar over 32, this is $1 over 15, I can't do that now.
Yeah, me neither.
But what I would,
That's when they say they're financially fairly comfortable.
yeah,
I get
because
that.
what I don't know if those, the $2 per 10 million, we're not gonna be. I don't think we'd be bonding 10 million on day one, we do it in tranches, so the first tranche will pay for the library, the second tranche, so I'm assuming we do some type of laddered or tiered structure.
Mhm.
So we're not drawing it all down on day one.
Yeah.
And so I don't know where that's where, I guess.
I guess I would say, yeah, I
They're
mean,
comparable.
if you did some quick
Yeah.
math,
I think
which I could do, I guess, after, but, to
I think
see.
they're pretty-
If they're comparable,
Pretty comparable.
I would lean on what staff is interested.
Yeah,
Yeah, Clint
I'm fine.
was leaning towards Morrison Cabot because he's had past experience with them. I've had limited experience with Northeast, so I think I'd defer to Clint's greater experience on that.
But I'm assuming this would have to, before we engage, this would have to go before a council vote.
Right.
Yep. And so as part of that vote, I would like to have an understanding of the fee structure broken down in a way that is understandable by the common person.
And
And an estimate of what it will cost us. That, typical bond, this typically takes 10 hours, it'll be this month, estimated this much.
with, I think, a clear understanding of why now, or,
Yes,
when-
exactly, yeah,
how it's gonna work,
Yeah,
like,
so, I'm fine
But I
with
think-
deferring to staff, I'm fine moving forward with this, but before we. Or, yes, as part of the vote, I want
You just let us know.
Sort of a sequencing,
Oh,
of how it's going to
and-
work.
Yeah.
Education for us as a council about the steps it's
Exactly.
gonna go through. Along the way.
Yeah. But I think that's the good point, is that we're gonna bond something.
Yeah.
So we are gonna engage over something, let's understand. I mean, I think we understand our role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But understand their role.
That was
And I
kind of
think-
my hope with this, was that we could look through it and I would try to get some information requests out of you
Yeah.
guys if you needed it. And
And I don't.
Get something put together.
Yep. That looks good to me.
Sounds good. So at this point, you'll let Clint know,
Mhm.
and then Clint will put it on a calendar to bring to council. That's the next
Yep, I
step.
think that's the plan, and I'll try to get some information sheets put together, and I'll work with Clint on that, where he's a little more knowledgeable on these than I am, and
Yeah.
hopefully we'll learn something along the way.
That sounds great.
Okay, sounds good. Awesome. All right. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, well, thank you, Zach. Thank you, Cody. I would say we are wrapped up.